money get paper. Cause you know we party hard later. Mr. Flex and Papa got the old city lock, but you get us in each and every area. Stepping NLC with no chaser.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are joining me from. I am Alluminati, and this is the Crypto and Cognac podcast show, as always, powered by Alti.com, the one-click crypto wallet for WhatsApp, Telegram, and Discord. And as always, fueled by Hennessy TT. I have the big one tonight, a 1 liter of the VS himself, and we are talking banking tonight, and I'm so excited to introduce my guest tonight. I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself, but I'm going to jump in with the introduction because he's probably not going to talk about these things because, you know, he's a very humble gentleman. So this evening's guest is Mr. George Thomas. George is the newly appointed CEO of Sagicor Bank Barbados, which is the first neobank in the English-speaking Caribbean. George most recently held the position of Deputy CIO of CIBC First Caribbean Bank. He was in charge of digitizing the bank over the past 3 years, driving the industry-leading digital banking product across 16 countries in the Caribbean. Prior to moving back home to Barbados, George held executive positions at both consulting companies and fintechs in the US and overseas. George has been a driving force in digital transformation of a number of companies, as well as the developing fintech solution based on customer needs. He has been focused throughout his career on understanding market dynamics and developing projects and services to meet customers' needs, all the time underpinned by best-in-class technology and processes. So, without further ado, welcome to you, sir, Mr. George Thomas. Thank you for being a part of the Crypto and Cognac podcast this evening.
Well, thanks for having me, Al. Thanks for having me. Really a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm excited. Well, not to start the conversation, but to continue a conversation that we've been having over the last few weeks.
Yes,
congratulations on your appointment. Congratulations on being first and leading from the front, as we say in the Caribbean. And you are the new CEO of Sagicor Bank Barbados. However, you would not consider yourself and may not be considered by others as a traditional bankman. So what I want you to do for us now is give us a little background behind who George Thomas is. Is he a bankman? Is he a tech guy? Who is he? And maybe tell us a little bit about your journey to this place that you're in now.
Well, I'll say, even though I'm an old guy, I probably exhibit more millennial tendencies because I am all that you just said. I started off my career many years ago at something called Barbados External Telecommunications as, of all things, a COBOL program. And that, you all know it as Flow now. It used to be Lime, cable and wireless, all kind of things. And but the thing is, it was for a billing system for online databases like Prodigy and AOL and so on. So the precursors of the internet. I didn't know it at that time. I just knew I was doing boring COBOL. I was happy to move on to something else like C and C++ and so on, right? I never contemplated working in a bank. I saw myself as an engineer, and hence I went off at Louisiana State University. I did a master's in electrical engineering. Actually, I did my bachelor's here at KFL and UE in math and sci. You know, so hence the COBOL. But along the way between schools, and after cable and wireless, I found myself working for a startup company. That was my first taste of startup here in Barbados. It was then a Canadian company. One of the founders was Kevin O'Leary, the Shark Tank man, right?
Right.
That was well before the Shark Tank, of course. We're talking the early 90s, like 92, 93.
Right.
And
Very
I
early
worked with
days.
them. Yeah, the really early days. This is like internet was still something in the military and in academia, but not really to the forefront. So we did a lot of bleeding edge things, right? And that's what really whet my appetite for innovation, because like we were the first software company to distribute software via CD-ROM. Then we had a CD-ROM burner. One of my colleagues at the time, Mr. Glenn White, a close friend of mine, we didn't even have a manual, but he's one of those people that just picks up things and figures it out. So he figured out how to burn CDs, and we were distributing software and CDs. And maybe the audience is too young to know, but
No. We have well learned and researched people in here, so they understand. Go ahead.
okay, well, you'd understand having a whole stack of CDs to install things, right? And so we were dealing with titles, like we were a software publisher, so like Broder Bund and the Learning Company and Reader Rabbit and a lot of those older titles, Compton's Encyclopedia, Duke Nukem, Wolfenstein. We pretty much took software, repackaged it, make it look good. If the code had bugs in it, we'd fix it, make it install nicely, put a nice package on it, and sell it. And then and it's like being a book publisher except for software. Right. But like I said, that exposed me to the world of technology, because when I was at Cable and Wireless, I was like this, right? Heads down. But now I'm dealing with people in India. I'm dealing with people in the United States, in Canada, in China. I'm dealing with people all over the world. And I'm this little kid, like working 16 hours a day and loving it, because you're coding, you're negotiating, and so on. I didn't know it at that time, but that's where I stopped being a heads down developer and learned business in terms of the art of the deal, how to see where value is, because you have to take these people's software and enhance its value and measure the enhancement, and then you have to do it. So you get to, and sometimes they want to negotiate with you. You know what I mean? So no, I don't want 7%. I don't want 7 cents on the dollar. I deserve 15 cents on the dollar. And so I found myself as a software engineer and then negotiating. So that's where I got into business, not as an MBA, but in the school of hard knocks, actually out in the field working. So I still had these desires to be a hardcore engineer. So I went to LSU. I went to Florida Tech first, and I transferred to LSU.
Switching sides of the country.
Pardon?
I say switching sides of the country.
Yes. From Florida to the bayous.
Listen, don't tell her, but I have big plans of my daughter going to LSU, putting on the purple and gold. And
yes.
She doesn't know I have it all planned out, but okay, I'm gonna leave her alone.
Okay. So she runs track or something?
Yeah, she does track.
Okay, well, best track and field school on the planet. So it's a great place. So but down there, I got really deep into engineering. I mean, in electrical engineering, computer engineering, and into the internet, right? So I did my first website in 1994, and it was something very basic HTML. You know what I mean? Back then, we used to look at satellite photos and other kinds of photos I ain't gonna talk about here. That was all they had on the internet, right? And then Amazon came and those other things came and Yahoo. but at the very beginning, it was really a geek's paradise. Let me just tell you. And it was really cool trying to. It was just mustard yellow background, but I was proud of myself. I had a web page, and it was for a department I was working for at college, and then there wasn't no JavaScript then. There wasn't even Java. It was just, there was no CSS. It was just pure HTML, right?
So it's we're talking about Web 1.
Web 1 or 0.1 or something. And then you had a little bit of interactivity. So you have some CGI scripts in the back.
Right.
Write some C programs to take stuff in from your form. And that was it. So that was my introduction to the internet and really jumping into the whole .com era, because from there now, Kevin, the company, they had moved to New York. sorry, they were listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They moved to Boston.
Right.
So it went from being a Canadian company with a Bajan offshore to a New York Stock Exchange listed company operating out of Boston. And I ended up, I left college early. I finished up remotely working out of Boston, and we did the first online store selling software. And that's where I got into Java. So around late 95, early 96, I got into, so I probably was one of the early Java programmers in the world, because I think it came out in mid 95.
Right.
And January, February 96, I had a cheesy scrolling graphic, because that's all it was good for. On top of our virtual store, and like I said, there was a lot of opportunity to learn, and at that time, you weren't thinking about money, you weren't thinking about bank, you weren't thinking about any of those things. It was just like just geeking out, being a total propeller head. You're digging into your C++, your C. Nobody wasn't really talking about Python back then. Your different, your Corn shell, your Bash, the different Unix shells, and that was it. It was about living, working, going in the bookstore, and sitting all Saturday and going to the gym and pumping iron. That was it. And that was it. Total geek. But then I ended up at monster.com, which took me to another level, right? And that was one of the early commercial .coms on planet Earth. And they were bought by a large Yellow Pages company called TMP Worldwide, but then it was like a reverse merger. And I started off there as a developer, and within 6 months, I was head of R&D, long-term projects, right? And then I got recruited from there to go to this company called Keen, which was a consulting firm. And within a few months, I was head of their e-business practice. So I tell people that I've had a life like Forrest Gump, because I go places and go to places and other things happen, and it keeps happening like that. There was no intention. It was just to learn and evolve. That literally was it. And at Keen, that's where I got more corporate, and that's where I got into financial services, because you're in Boston, you have State Street Bank, Fidelity, Putnam Investments, which is no longer, I think it's been acquired by somebody, but it was $1 trillion fund at the time. You have Wellington, which is one of the biggest funds on planet Earth. You went to banking at one stage, so you know his name, and some of the listeners should, or just do your research. Those are some of the leading financial services companies in the 90s and early 2000s, and really getting in there and working on their investment systems and modernizing systems. I'm putting that internet front end on them and bringing the Java and playing with app servers and so on. So that was, even though I was a business person closing multi-million-dollar deals, I was still getting in there and architecting. Until finally, they said, listen, it don't make sense, you coding again. Bring in the business, right? And then 9/11 happened. And .com, NASDAQ had already started to crash, around March, April, May of 2001. So 9/11, the bottom dropped out. And I went into management consulting, got shipped off to Washington, D.C., and got into the world of ERP. So moving from financial service, we didn't call it fintech back then. It was,
financial services.
Financial services technology, something like that, right? But no, I'm working in DC government, in the heart of Washington, DC, and modernizing, doing ERP type stuff. And then I had an opportunity to come home and work on a merger. I mean, I didn't even know, I knew about Barclays, knew about CIBC, but, it was come home for 3 to 6 months, do a gig, and then go back. And the projects just kept coming, right? So it was, you went from one to another. And internet banking, I was the technical lead and architect for internet banking for Caribbean, and then online payments, and then mobile banking, and it just kept snowballing until finally one day someone said, the head of technology said, so why don't you take a job with us? This 5 years in, right? I said, well, so he said, come and be head of our enterprise architecture. I said, okay, all right.
Okay, all
I
right.
did it, right? Literally, I mean, I may sound flippant, but that is how I've always been about the learning. And maybe because I got affirmed really early in my career, like the level of work that I did, the level I went to early in my career. So I never went at anything with an ego because,
Looking right.
because I
And
just,
looking for a title.
no, I just put in the work. I just, my thing was like when I was in grad school, you have these chaps from China and India that are like so much brighter. So then in my mind, the way to keep up is to just outwork people. So then you take that into the world of work and I just outwork everybody. That was it. Not being smarter than anybody. Like I said, like Forrest Gump, you show up and you do stuff and more stuff happens and things start to work. Eventually you do enough stuff. You seem intelligent, but it's just that you're working hard. That's all. Right?
Yep.
That's been my thing. So as long as it was cool stuff to do, interesting stuff to do, that could grow my brain, and I could help people, encourage other people, because in the Caribbean we have a crisis of confidence. And cutting my eye teeth in North America, I can safely say the smartest people I knew were back home, right? So, but yes, they didn't know it, right? So being able to encourage people and also develop myself, that was really what's driven me. So through the years, with FCIB, I left them in 2014. I went to the Middle East. I got an opportunity to be the CTO of a startup, a fintech out there, and I, roamed from Dubai to Nigeria to South Africa, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal. I mean, I went around Africa. I was even in Moscow at one stage, interestingly enough. Yeah. Yeah. That was a cool time.
Comrade.
Yes, yeah. But at that time, Moscow was a cool city. Let me just say, they were very cool people. I enjoyed the couple of weeks I spent there on a project, and other cities in Europe. So I spent 4 years there. Then I have a son. I have a young son, and he came out and was like, well, I have to be here and do my thing. So I came back, and in between all of that, let's get to crypto now.
I was letting it come. It would come naturally.
So you're with a fintech. You're and by the way, that word fintech, I learned that word by this guy. He was the CIO of Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank. In 2015, he called us into his office, and we drove from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, and we going to meet Mr. Mazin. Very nice guy. We're talking, and he said to me, "George Habibi," and in Arabic, that's my dear. This, you are a fintech. I said, "What's that?" "No, you're a fintech. I fear you because you are going to try to disrupt my business." I was like, "I am. I'm just here to talk about digital wallets." He said, "No, you're dangerous." So that's why I heard the term fintech for the first time. But as a respectable fintech, we had to dip our toe into crypto. So part of my role was looking at new technologies, and ended up, doing the various courses. I did an MIT course on it. I ended up actually doing a gig with a Swiss filmmaker. We did an ICO,
right?
Which, kind of happened during the crypto winter of 2017. So,
poor timing.
Yeah, but the timing was off. But I'll tell you, that guy must be happy now, because whereas ETH dropped from 350 at 335 at the start of the project to like 90 something by the end, it is at its low now, it's 3,000, but it went as high as 5,000, right? So based on what we did there, he's probably laughing all the way to Binance. Right now, right? So that was my introduction, right? R&D. And then I said to myself, I can't be doing ICOs and not buy some of this stuff. So finding a place that would take a US card or even a Middle Eastern card was difficult. I found
Right.
two. I won't call their names. I found two, and I took a risk. And I'll tell you, I put $400 in one, and when I checked it last year, it had multiplied by over 10 times, right? Just to show you what it is. So I am not here again. I'm speaking as George Thomas, not
Yep.
as the and my personal adventures. But what I would say is, there's nothing, not even in the stock market, that can give you that kind of alpha, that kind of upswing. You just
Yeah.
have to be very careful. Like for me, I am a disciple of Warren Buffett. I believe in Warren Buffett's look for value, hold on to it,
Yeah.
and over time you will always win, right? And that's how I play it. And then don't risk any more than you can afford to lose. Keep it
Correct.
real. I keep it real conservative.
You know,
So
you know
let
what I
me.
like, George? You know what I like,
Mhm,
George? The fact that, a lot of people will associate your positions and the positions you've held with a certain income bracket. And yet here you are, you're not talking about having put $400,000 in or $4 million in. You're talking about being comfortable enough with $400 at that point in time. And that was what you were comfortable with. And some
mhm,
people, I find, when they come into this space, they always try to hang their hat too far, too fast, without having, even a plan, much less a long-term plan. So
mhm.
I appreciate that you shared that figure, because I
Right,
think
thank
it's
you.
important for people to understand that, it's okay to start with a little bit. And it might be
Mhm.
$400, it might be $40. It is okay. Anyway, sorry for interrupting you.
No, no, no.
Continue.
That's a good point, because when you look at, I mean, like my favorite thing is still XRP, despite their SEC troubles, right? Because right. We're not
No, no,
promoting
no.
it.
I am not an XRP fan. So
Mhm.
but we wouldn't get into it. You're a
Yeah,
fan
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
XRP. It goes along with your banking ideals. So continue.
Right, because remember I said value, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
the thing behind wire transfers, that they're trying to reimagine wire transfers.
yeah,
Ethereum, I like Ethereum because Ethereum is everybody and their grandmother that's doing an ICO. I mean, there's some other exotic ones that people are using that are probably more performant, because Ethereum, the public Ethereum, can be a dog. I mean, we went
yeah,
through that. It's oversubscribed, right? And I know they're going to fork it, or maybe they have already, and make it more efficient. They're going to
yeah.
change the algorithm, the
Yeah, they're going to
consensus
change the consensus protocol around it from
algorithm.
proof of work to proof of stake. So
Yes. So
hoping,
that should enhance the performance. But what I like about it is being utilized by many, many people. So like if you look at how Warren Buffett operates, he like things like Coca-Cola, because whether it's good for you or not, people love it, right? He like things
yeah,
like McDonald's, because whether it's good for you, people love it. Things like
yeah,
flour, rice, you know what I mean?
wheat,
Very
yeah,
basic, toilet paper, basic things that have to use, right?
yeah,
So for me, that's that. Now, something like Bitcoin, that is the primordial, the predecessor, the original, if you
yeah,
will. And just the emotion and the thought and the volume of focus on it is what has driven it to its level. So I think if you study, if you use your kidneys, as a client of mine told me 2 weeks ago, yeah, you use your kidneys. I go to the man and he laid on sit down and said, "Kidneys, boy, you gotta use your kidneys." I say, "Okay, right." But if you use your kidneys, you can make something there. But let me know crossover to, and again, I'm not represent. I'm speaking as George Thomas, just being
yeah,
totally frank
yeah.
about
We
certain
have we
things.
having a casual conversation.
Yes. I understand, and some people that the guests are going to say this guy is totally crazy. But I can tell you, there is a good reason why the regulators feel the way they do about crypto. But that is changing as you see them experimenting with all over the world with CBDC, central bank, because remember, this is a technology that came out after the crash in 2008 and was supposed to give power to the people. No more central bank, no more nothing. It's just me and you transacting and so on. So naturally, something that is being touted as the thing to put you out of business, to take away your relevance. I mean, it's natural survival, right?
Yeah.
And also, there was so much mystique around it. I mean, you know who creates product X, product Y, product Z, but who is Satoshi Nakamoto, right? Who is this? You know, right? So there's this thing that has come up in a kind of a thinking of it as a risk manager in a roguey kind of way to disintermediate. But as we wind the clock forward in 2022, we're seeing regulators studying it and saying, you know what? First of all, the blockchain itself is like a souped up database, right? That many people subscribe to. So that's a data structure that could be useful for our business where we have multiple participants. Secondly, the crypto itself, the concept may be useful because now you're seeing governments using it as a replacement of fiat, right? Not the tradable thing on the exchange. Let's be clear. Not the tradable thing, but the technology. The technology is being utilized, right?
To access parts of the population that may have been left out.
Underbanked. That might have been left out.
So the unbanked and the underbanked.
The banks and the underbanked, exactly. The other thing is that as you see in some Western countries in Asia and so on, you're seeing some of the card schemes accepting. You're seeing some trading platforms, the stock exchanges. I'm not going to call their names, but allowing it. It is the system is dipping its toe. Now they realize, okay, this is not the thing that's going to kill us. Actually, it has value. Let us gradually cogitate it, right?
But let me ask a question. Do you think it was a realization that, you know, this is not the thing that is gonna kill us? There is some value here, or was it that they realized, okay, this thing is gonna kill us if we don't participate, if we do not join with it? We can't beat it. Let's join it.
I honestly, I think that some of the smart people start to see the value and got away from the emotion and start to see there's value in these mechanisms, right? I don't want to tackle the fear of it, but I will say that there are some people who would have seen how can we use this to enhance and improve, right? So you see some top bankers like from JP Morgan, digital asset holdings, right? That would have been the originators of Hyperledger, right? That lady Blythe Masters that was big in the derivative space, you know, championing a blockchain type technology. So what I'm saying, I think people start to see utility, how it could be used, and then would come along the thinking that if we don't use this to drive additional efficiencies, that we run the risk of being disintermediated because they have these fintechs that are coming up, and eventually they're going to have a sufficient value proposition that the regulator is going to say, look, you know what? These guys tick all of the boxes and they're doing things efficiently, right? So I think, go ahead.
Let's stick up in there for 2 seconds, right? So we are seeing a transitioning from the traditional Main Street bank who have been, and over the last few years particularly, been significantly disrupted by the neobanks and the digital banks, the PayPals, and those types of institutions, which you know, Sagicor Bank Barbados seeks to become one of. And now we see, even before neobanks have had an opportunity to really take full hold, we are seeing cryptocurrency and the technology behind blockchain even further enhancing and accelerating the technology growth away from the main street banks. So do you see crypto blockchain being the end of the road for the next foreseeable future? Or do you think there's something coming immediately after crypto blockchain, just as crypto blockchain came quickly after neobanks?
Well,
You're the tech guy, so I'm asking.
That is a good question. What I'm going to say, based on the length of time I've been in technology, it is very dangerous to say a particular thing just because it's hitting today is the end of the road. Right. Every time that we've ever proclaimed that, you just wait 7 years and something else comes along. Seriously, just wait. I think that the world is virtualizing. So I've been involved in the music business, right? And you had vinyl,
right,
cassettes, CDs, 8-tracks. Then you had the Napster download things. Then you had iTunes, which became like the official thing. Right. Then you saw the total disintermediation of the music business got turned on its head, and then you see streaming, right? It didn't stop with the Napster iTunes model, streaming, right? And you see that.
Now we're seeing NFT music.
I know you're seeing NFT music, right? So what I'm trying to say is, blockchain is what we see now. We're seeing that is a means of virtualizing fiat. Let's just say, or value, right? Just like Uber virtualized hotel chains. Right. Sorry, not hotel chains. Taxi services, right?
Taxi services.
Taxis. And Airbnb did the same thing for hotel chains, right? Or places to stay when you travel. So we're seeing a virtualization of society. When we think in terms of data centers, we don't think data center again. We think cloud, because somewhere thousands of miles away, an Amazon, a Google, a Microsoft Azure, a IBM, somebody has a data center or data centers bigger than several football fields put together. Powering this thing, just like with Bitcoin mines. And I worked on a value proposition for Bitcoin mining here in the Caribbean a few years ago. I mean, to do anything, you need tens of millions of dollars of investment to do anything, right? I mean, I know the People's Republic government would have, I mean, not getting political, but in terms of Bitcoin mining, took a look at that, and I think there's some rules there on that. But the majority of the mining was there at one stage, right? So
and now we see Texas in the US, we see Kazakhstan,
Iceland, because of the hot springs and so on,
and
so
El Salvador with their
there
volcano.
You go. Yes, exactly. So because it located near cheap energy, near cheap energy, because it takes a lot of energy to power these things. So just to come back to your question, I will not say it is I think it's a step towards the full virtualization of our world.
Right.
So
with that said, what place do you see the metaverse?
That's where I was going next. That's where you see, because now 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, we were playing Second Life, right? And you go on Second Life and you stumble around and whatever, right? And now people are talking about the metaverse. You see Barbados has an embassy there. And you're seeing companies rushing to go to the metaverse and so on. And but from way back, Second Life had a currency, right? So you would go and you would buy into that currency, and you could buy costumes and whatever, your avatar, you could you could dandy up yourself. So they had some kind of virtual currency back then. Think about that, right?
Right.
And that was before Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That was back in I first went on in 2004 or 2005, 2006, sometime like around there in the middle of the first decade of the 2000s. And
Right.
now we're talking about moving whole businesses and government entities on there, because that, like I said, we are experiencing the world. We are moving more from less physical to more of a virtual. And the last 2.5, 3 years has taught us how the art of the possible in terms of being virtual, in terms of accessing services without ever leaving your home. Because for great periods of time over the last 2 years, we couldn't leave our homes, right? So education is virtualized. I would have done an AI course back in 2011 where there were like 500,000 plus people. I think, is that Udacity or Coursera? It's one of the precursors to one of them, right? And now that mode of learning is what our children had to go through for the past 2 years, right?
Standard.
So I'm just saying that is the latest stage in the virtualization of our world and our experiences. But I foresee there to be other. I don't know what they will be,
Right.
but I think that's just a stage.
Okay, so you made a comment when we were talking about mining and the places that are engaged in mining, and having previously thought about the prospect of having it done on a large scale in the Caribbean. We have two countries in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, who are producers of natural gas and oil.
I'm surprised that there are no mines there. In fact,
you and I both.
5-6 years ago, when I was doing a study with some folk, we were looking at Tobago. Seriously, we started thinking about Barbados, but the cost per kilowatt is really way too high in Barbados. We'd have to do solar energy, and solar energy then was not like how it is today, right?
It's still prohibitive.
Yes. So then we started looking at a proposition there's a park. There's like a
E-Tech
yes,
right.
Yes. We started looking at that. But then the investors, the potential investors, got a little skittish because these were folk that were investing in China, and they knew that things were going to change, so they were looking at alternatives. You know what I mean? So I think then they started looking at the U.S. the Midwest.
I know Texas is big into it. A lot of states now are trying to court the Bitcoin mining council, led by people like Michael Saylor, and they especially because now with the Bitcoin mining council, there is some level of there is a body that regulators can have conversations with. There is a body that is reporting information, that is sharing education, and these are people who are respected, who are coming from respected spaces in the traditional world. So now these regulators tend to be listening. So we've seen a lot of states in the United States courting these people. Everybody wants to be first of the seconds. So I mean, I guess it's left to be seen if the Caribbean continues to be late, or if other countries take the lead from what Barbados is doing with their limited infrastructural and
the size,
natural resources and their size, and they are moving quite heavily and quite bravely into the space. I know, led by Gabriel and his team, and their relationship with the government Prime Minister Mia Mottley seems to be quite brave about it, and maybe because her and her country's back is against the wall, not having natural resources. Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, we can always say, well, we will sell oil, we will sell gas, we don't need Bitcoin. But,
Yeah. Well, it, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for the Caribbean. The one thing you have to know, and I'm saying this now, I'm going to not putting my Sagicor bank hat on, but putting the hat of someone that understands banking on. We get marked harder in the Caribbean than northern Western countries. We get marked harder from a not willingly by our regulators, but the overall bodies, right? I mean, as soon as we blow our nose, we're on a blacklist somewhere. It is, so it is very tough for us as small island developing countries. And you hear the different prime ministers across the region speak to it, right? So things that you may see passing and doing well in other jurisdictions, we have to jump through more hoops. And it may frustrate the consumer because the consumer doesn't see what even the regulator here or the banks have to, the kind of hoops that they have to jump through. You understand what I'm saying? So that is, and you would have been in the industry, so you understand that these things are there. But that is why you see in Barbados, they would have done a sandbox so you get to prove it, because the big thing is you have to prove your concept. Once you prove your concept is not going to harm the consumer, then you make a case, because that's what regulation is about. Regulation is about making sure that the entrepreneurs don't produce things that can harm the public, right? And the other thing to note is that banks, when something happens, the first people that are going to get litigation pointed at will be the banks. And even though they'll say, well, you should have put this control on, you should have done this, you should have done that. So there are all these forces at work. So outside of the system, you will just say the banks don't want to do this because they were trying to keep us back. But the reality is the banks have to study it because there's certain rules and regulations that they have to work by. So, and I'm saying this as a person that's been on both sides, the fintech side of the fence and the inside the bank.
What about the people who would say the banks can do those things in a way that is less predatory on its customers in terms of their seeming focus on shareholders as their only relevant stakeholders? So banks have become, especially in the Caribbean, in the wider world as well, have become very much intrigued with and enthralled by being able to make statements about their quarterly returns and go in competition about how much hundreds of millions in profits they make. Can the banks hold their regulatory responsibilities in a way that is more supporting of their customer base?
So I think that there is a tremendous desire and drive to align to more of what you're saying based on what I have seen. Without going into a history lesson, you have to look at the history, right? And I mean, so now I would say in the 21st century, the banks are all working towards being more customer centric, being more in tune. The thing is, a large multi-thousand person organization cannot move as quickly as a fintech that has 100 people, 50 people, right. 200 people, what have you, that was not created 200 years ago or 100 years ago, but created in the last 2 or 3 years or 5, 10 years, right? So what the well-funded fintechs in the world have, and what you're also seeing is a lot of the large banks partnering with fintechs in Canada, in the US. I know when I worked with that fintech, we were talking to. I mean, I'm not going to call their names, but think of one of the largest banks in North America. We were working with them on reimagining the merchant acquiring thing, like being able to be more thoughtful, offer more to consumers, and
Right.
so on, card holders, right? So there was a whole division set up to work with fintechs, and they said, look, if we put you through our process, we would never go to market. So we build a sandbox where you can do some pilot proof of concept, some pilots, and then when we have it built, then we put it through our process. It was already built, right? So then we would put whatever controls we need around it. So that bank and several other banks of that nature in North America and in Europe are actually no longer competing, but partnering with, investing in. And I would see that. And I mean, you're seeing this here with Sagicor. You're seeing they're actually looking developing that aspect, right? So, like I said, I'm here to talk as George Thomas, not in my new. Yeah. And I thank you for bringing me on to, because I wanted to give a balanced perspective, because I have done ICOs. I mean, if our investors had think, I would have been a part one of a mine today, right? So I have been through that, the academic side and the practical side of the crypto world, and I've also done a lot of stuff in the banking space. I just wanted to give a very balanced,
Right.
a more balanced thing. And the point that you made earlier, I hope if there's one thing that people take away from this or conversation is the $400. I was developing something. I said, I am going to be a hypocrite if I'm developing this. I don't take some kind of risk. I like Ethereum. When we started that project, the price of ETH was like $334, $335. I bought an ETH. I bought some XRP, which was like worth like $1 or something.
Right.
And maybe some lumens or something like that, right? Right. So for me, and I could bet that we see people even in the regular stock market in the US and stuff, banking, taking up their whole life savings and betting it. Nah, don't do that. No, you have to study the market, because the same psychological and economic factors that are going to move a Google stock or Microsoft stock move the cryptos, right? And the forex, because forex is another thing. This is not what this show is about, but forex is another big thing. These things move based on
Socioeconomic factors, geopolitical
socioeconomic.
factors.
Yes, yeah. So we've seen announcements coming out about certain place only taking X currency for oil, right? So that's gonna do something, right? That's gonna do something, right? So if you study your space, like if you're going to school, because if you want to make money in it and you want to be safe, you have to study it. You know what I mean?
I mean, and you used a term there that I really want to stress on it. And I heard somebody, I don't know where I heard it, but I heard somebody say, you said, know what you're willing to bet, and I was listening to some podcast or some interview. I consume way too much crypto stuff to remember where I hear it all. But, she was saying that your first investment should be the equivalent of what you are willing to take to Las Vegas on a weekend.
Yes.
Whatever you are willing to take and blow in Las Vegas on a weekend, start there.
Yes.
Because if it's $1,000, start there. If it's no money, start there. Start with the education. If it's $100, but whatever you are willing to take to a Las Vegas weekend trip. And it was a female person who was saying it, because she said a weekend girls trip to Las Vegas. Whatever you're willing to take there, that is how you should start your crypto journey.
Is this a YouTube personality?
I think she was just being interviewed maybe by CBS or maybe she was on Real Vision. I watch a lot of Real Vision content. Raul Pal, he has, in my view, an incredible view of the macroeconomic factors around the crypto and blockchain space and the financial space as a whole.
Right.
He's somebody who believes in ETH a lot because he believes in the network effects. He think network effects is one of the strongest theories to track the growth of any asset class. From the internet all the way. And we must admit, even though there are other chains out there, nobody quite has the network effects that Ethereum has in terms of having other platforms running on it.
Yes.
As a payment rail, nobody has the network effects that Bitcoin has, especially with Lightning coming on board and stuff like that. So it may have been a Real Vision.
Well, one person that I wanted to check out on YouTube is Jessica Lane. No, she's a Forex woman, right? She's Jessica Lane, from a lady from Atlanta. And what I like, very down to earth, very, very plain and straight and basic. She does these live sessions on Sundays, an hour and a half or so,
Right.
giving advice, right? It's interactive with her students, but anybody can go on YouTube and plug in. But it's not crypto. She deals with Forex.
Yes.
But the one thing she keeps repeating is discipline, discipline, discipline. You have to study. If you're going to seriously make money and not be gambling your money, you have to study the space.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
And if you're going to take positions in something, you have to not just study that thing. Study Ethereum, like these white papers that come out. Read the white papers. And if you don't understand, Google the terms, ask somebody questions, understand the thing, understand the dynamics of it.
I always say that my greatest regret in the crypto space is that when I thought I couldn't afford to invest financially, I didn't invest from an educational standpoint. I think, even if you have $0 and 0 cents, cut out one Netflix episode per week and spend some time, cut out one evening at the bar, cut out, take a book, take a YouTube video into the bathroom with you when you're sitting on quiet time instead of TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And learn something, because that's how I got into this space. I just found myself consuming at times too much crypto. I was sleeping 6 hours a day and I was spending 19 hours a day to 20 hours a day on crypto. It was in the background while I was doing every single thing. I became obsessed with it. And that is and that knowledge is what has led me to a place where I have this conviction about this space, led me to a place where I started my business, led me to a space where the time that I was spending on crypto had become so important to me that I felt like my day job was taking up too much of my time. So I decided to step away from that. But yeah, 100%, I think, it's important for people to seek the information, seek the knowledge in anything that you want to invest in. You can't flip houses if you don't understand what you're doing with flipping houses. You would lose your shit.
You will lose your shirt.
You can't trade Forex. You can't trade gold. You look at the most conservative investment opportunity. If you do not know what you are doing, it is possible to lose your shit. So education might be more important than any investment that you would do financially.
Most definitely.
George, I don't know how it happened, but we already almost to the end.
Yeah.
So for this first discussion, right? Part 1, we'll call this part 1.
All right.
I'm gonna give you the opportunity to make your final statements. We didn't get to talk anything really about Sagicor Bank, but I know you're not here as a representative of Sagicor Bank. But hopefully, the next time you come on, you guys will be locked and loaded, and you could give us a little bit more insight into what we can expect as Caribbean people from the first digital bank in the English-speaking Caribbean. So, do you
Yes,
think?
indeed.
Say your last piece.
So I mean, like I said, I want to encourage everyone, who, whether the detractors or the aficionados of crypto, to do the research, understand the space. And I mean, this is a crypto thing, but I'll also encourage people to look at forex as well.
Right.
Because and look at the NFTs, go beyond the basics, study this stuff and understand what drives the market. You don't need an economics degree, even though that would help, but you don't need that. There's enough information online.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out, you were consuming tons of content. You have to put some intention behind it. It's not, they're no get rich quick things. You have to put some energy in, and then you will start to see the returns proportionate. Otherwise, you can gamble and you may win, but the probability is you're going to lose more than you win, right? So you got to put that in terms of, and again, from a balanced perspective, I want to say that, tell people just be patient. We already seeing the central banks, at least 3 in the Caribbean, going to digitize their fiat. That is them dipping the toe, because behind 2 of them there is a blockchain. One of them is not using a blockchain, but but we're pretty much leading the world in that space. That is a positive sign. That's pretty much it. Like I know people get very fervent. The banks, but just be patient, because at the end of the day, the bank is entrusted with holding your value and keeping it safe. And the morning of the day, and we've seen it many times, when bad things happen, people want to attack the bank. So the banks are not naturally thing, and the regulators are there to try to keep consumers safe. But like I said, in due course, I'm convinced we will see a different posture, if you will, towards what we know today as cryptocurrency and the derivatives, the decentralized finance, the non-fungible tokens. I just really love that explanation of non-fungible tokens you did in the RSS webinar last week. I really loved it. But again, that's what I would say. So educate yourself, be patient, and take your time, and everybody stay safe. And for the young people, for the young engineers and finance people and so on, dream and think big. Like I said, when I left UE, I just wanted to learn, right? And thankfully, like I said, I joke about the Forrest Gump thing, but there was a lot more intention than that. But building experience and helping people along the way, moving along in a positive path. I want to encourage young people to do that. Live your dreams, but don't just dream. Put in a lot of hard work, right? And you have all the resources. It is possible today to do the equivalent of a master's degree without ever leaving your home or without paying a cent.
Yep.
Just go online and learn, right? And once you have that knowledge inside of you, getting experience, you can create your own experience. They got something named GitHub. Go and write your own code and put it up there and use that as your resume or sell your products. You know what I mean? That's what I want. Be a bit bolder and more adventurous, and actually do stuff. Don't just talk about it, do it.
And understand that the Caribbean can compete at the highest level.
With anybody. It's not just track and field. Because anything that we put our minds to here from here in the Caribbean, we can stand on top of anybody with. So I want to encourage the young people and everybody really, but especially the young people, because the young people, I mean, we are older now, right? It's the young people that want to lead things beyond us, right? And I want to encourage them to really take advantage of the amount of knowledge that is available and accessible readily, and big up yourself. You know, go out there and maximize yourself.
George, thank you so very much for spending a little bit of time with me.
Thank you very much, Al,
I
my
can't
brother.
wait. I can't wait to have you back, and we will continue talking
We will
offline.
continue talking. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
Okay.
guys, another amazing conversation. I'm so I'm looking forward to having George back. I'm very very excited for what is in store for the Caribbean with Sagicor, Bank Barbados, and the other neobanks. People like Aldwin Wayne and the guys over at WePay. Um, so like George said, maybe we just have to be patient, right? Because adoption is inevitable, guys. Have a blessed one. Stay safe, Illuminati.